All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's Thursday, and still don't have a final deal yet. But if we do, one of the questions I'm asking today is how much credit, if any, and I put credit actually in quotation marks. You can see in that image I put together, how much credit do Harris Biden deserve? And I include Harris in that Harris Biden because she said during the campaign that she was in the room when a lot of the decisions were made about funding Israel, about supplying Israel with weapons of mass destruction. She was right there. She agreed with all of them, and she wouldn't do anything differently. So if there is indeed a ceasefire, right now, both presidents are claiming credit. Their campaigns are saying we deserve it. How much does Harris Biden really deserve, if any? And if you're going to give them credit, then don't we have to assign an awful lot of blame to them for all the devastation that's happened in the past 15 months, 16 months since Israel's latest Nakba began. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join me, 240-242-5646. The killing by Israel continues in Gaza, but before we get there, and again, that's been what I center, right? It's the tragedy, the horror, the murders, the genocide, the massacre, whatever word or words you think are most appropriate. That's what I center on Halitics. And I've noticed, by the way, I don't get a lot of viewers. I don't get a lot of hits. But when I talk about Gaza, I get even fewer. People really, for whatever reason, don't want to hear about this. And I guess it's just too depressing, or they don't want to hear me blame the United States because we're so complicit. But hey, this is the most important information out there. And I, for good or evil, am able to discuss what I want to discuss. I do this, I wouldn't call it a labor of love. I feel like it's a labor of necessity. It's something I have to do. But I can talk about what I want without too much concern about whether it negatively impacts on my audience growth or audience size. Maybe that's privilege, whatever word you want to use. I don't think there's anything more important than this. So here is is it NBC? It says 4 News. I don't know if that's NBC. I don't think it is, but it's a pretty good report, about 4+ minutes that I'll play with various interruptions. So let's go.
After more than a year of unimaginable pain, celebrations on Gaza's streets as news of the ceasefire filtered through tonight.
All right, so you can see, so happy because there was an agreement reached in principle. It's not done. Israel, Knesset still has to vote on this. And even if they do agree with the terms, the ceasefire officially won't go into effect until Sunday. So there's going to be more killing by Israel, even if this ultimately goes forward as hope. But it's so awful there. The pain, the suffering has been so intense, so acute for so long that any legitimate hope is vastly celebrated. And you have to, again, I believe, fairly, legitimately condemn in the strongest possible terms the complicity of Harris Biden in this crime against humanity that the Israelis have committed and are committing with the full, unwavering support of the U.S. government, the U.S. administration. By the way, I should have figured this out. It is British 4, right? Because they have their Channel 4. So that's what this is from, England.
Young lives overshadowed by this war. Now, finally, a chance of a more peaceful future.
والله احنا فرحانين كثير انه الهم والحزن والقصف والموت.
So happy it's over, he says, and tragically it's not yet over. And even if the ceasefire takes hold, it may end abruptly, as Israel has made clear through its actions that it does not abide by international agreements, it does not comply with international law, and it does not respect human life.
خلص بطل صار وقف وإنه حنرجع بلادنا وحنرجع لأهلنا.
We'll return to our families, and there you can see
embraces.
those women hugging shrouded bodies, those who are victims of the American-Israeli genocide.
In what could prove to be the final hours of Israel's deadly war in Gaza. These, the victims of a strike in Deir al-Balah that killed 11 people, including 4 children from one family. Any ceasefire too late for them and more than 46,000 others here.
يعني احنا من اسبوعين واحنا بنتبع الاخبار انه تهدئه ومش تهدئه والكلام اللي بنسمعه. اللي على ارض الواقع يا جماعه غير تماما. اللي على ارض الواقع كل يوم مزيد من
Reality on the ground is that every day brings more killings and destruction.
المزيد من التدمير، مربعات سكنيه باكملها بتمحى، احياء باكملها بتمحى.
Peace in Gaza would mean peace in a wasteland. 2/3 of all buildings in the territory destroyed or damaged by Israeli strikes. With practically the entire population displaced and hunger widespread, everyone has been hoping for an end to the fighting.
How can anyone question or doubt that this is genocide? How can anyone argue that the Israeli leaders are not guilty of the ultimate crime?
الناس في انتظار كل لحظة إنه الهدنة تبدأ، لأنه للأمانة إحنا مش عايشين، إحنا عايشين بحكم الموتى، هذه مش حياة. كل دقيقة بتمر علينا كأنها سنة، الناس بتموت كل لحظة.
We live like dead people. Every moment feels like a year.
In Israel's hostage square, focal point for the families of the more than 90 Israeli hostages still held captive by Hamas. Tonight, there was cautious optimism.
We are just waiting for them to come home. We're excited, obviously, but until they're not here, we don't want to get too excited.
There's also still fear. On multiple occasions, a deal has seemed imminent, only to fall through. 33 hostages would be released in a first 6-week phase in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian detainees. Will the two sides be able to agree on continuing the deal beyond that?
We know that there can be many accidents on the way and many issues that can postpone it or delete it, so we are not there yet.
Amidst the misery and squalor that has become Gaza, families dream of their old lives. Amal, suffering from cancer, forced to flee Gaza City, is already imagining what it would be like to return to whatever is left of her home.
أنا يمكن لما يفتحوا الحاجز يقولوا يلا ارجعوا يمكن مع الفرحة ما بعرف يمكن أمشي حافية.
So she's saying maybe she can go back. That woman, I believe, has cancer based on what the reporter was saying, and she's saying she would be so joyful, so happy to be able to return to her home.
من كتر الفرحة يمكن آخذ حفيد من أحفادي يعني يمكن محمد قديش صغير بالعمر عمره أيام يمكن هيك أحضنه وأركض فيه.
To carry her grandchildren.
يعني أولادي هيك ماشيين وراي هالعالم كلها تركض.
Little Muhammad is just 1 day old, just a few days old, so she'd carry him. It is so painful to me, I guess is the best word to use, that there are so many people who are intelligent, who I respect, for whom the suffering, that's unimaginable pain, rolls off their back. They don't care, or they will immediately respond, well, what about what happened to Israel? What about the victims on October 7th? As though there's some kind of a quid pro quo. Well, because of what happened on October 7th, because we're the Jewish people, or we support them, they're our allies, we get to create an unimaginable hellscape for millions of people. That's the lesson that many have taken from this, and it really does kind of lead you to believe there's no human hope for the human for the species or for the planet.
أحس خطواتي إنها عم تركض أنا كأني راكبة طيارة وصولي لغزة.
Two peoples divided by so much, united for now in cautious hope.
Well, the outlines of this deal are really pretty much the same as the outlines of the deal that we've been talking about for much of the past year after it was outlined by President Biden last May. Since then, thousands more Palestinians as well as multiple Israeli hostages have been killed. It's hard to escape the conclusion that a key driving factor behind the success of the talks at this stage now is the upcoming inauguration of President Trump. He had threatened that all hell would be unleashed if the hostages are not released. But perhaps it's his impact on the Israeli government that is more significant. Netanyahu, it seems like...
I'm going to just stop it there again. So the reporter, this is Channel 4, liberal media in the UK, or liberal as we would see it, left media in the UK, and acknowledging the pressure on Israel by Trump, right? Not the threats against the Palestinians, which horrified me. That's not what caused the deal to happen, because as the reporter tells you, the same conditions were agreed to 8 months ago by Hamas, and Israel has repeatedly pulled the rug out from discussions, has repeatedly said, no, we're not going to agree, no matter how much Antony Blinken, a war profiteer, claims that it's Hamas that was the stumbling block. It has always been Israel, and everyone knows it. No one doubts it. And this reporter even makes that more abundantly clear by saying what really drove this is the pressure that Trump exerted on Netanyahu, on Israel. That's why it looks like, and it isn't definite yet, and I so pray it happens. I don't really pray because I don't believe, but I so hope it happens because, there's a real fear that if this doesn't happen over the weekend, Trump takes power, his hardliners, the Elise Stefanik's, the Huckabees, the Rubios, all of whom are ardent, aggressively violent Zionists, will basically just green light more Israeli atrocities.
If the hostages are not released, but perhaps it's his impact on the Israeli government that is more significant. Netanyahu, it seems, likely thought that whilst Biden was in power, that perhaps Trump would be more supportive of his war effort, but Trump making clear that he wanted an end to the war before he took office. We'll have to wait and see if that's what this ceasefire agreement evolves into. We'll also...
All right, so, this is what we've been saying. It seems very, very clear that it took Trump getting involved through his negotiator Witkoff to finally bring Netanyahu around. Now, I'm not going to give Trump a lot of credit, but what I'm going to do is say this is clear evidence of the massive failings of Harris Biden, that Trump can come in, and Trump has some peace cred. He does. He legitimately does. But it took him to come in because what could have been accomplished a year ago or more, with tens of thousands of people still alive, with Gaza not razed to the ground, it could have happened. But it didn't because of the Harris Biden failure, criminal failure. It's not over yet. The killing hasn't stopped. Israel is still murdering innocents. 71. This Reuters headline says 70. The actual text after the ceasefire accord, Israel still killing 71. In that article, it says 70 in the headline, but I'm going to go with 71, which I didn't clip out. I guess I should have. And there's your caption, Israel and the Biden-Harris. He's still Biden-Harris. It's not Trump. Yeah, we'll change that to Trump once it's Trump. But 46,778 if you go with that 71 number from yesterday. 71 killed yesterday. And listen, if you watch my if you're watching now, give me a call, 240-242-5646. I really want to hear from those of you, maybe there aren't that many, but if you're watching, and this is live now, why you turn off when I talk about Israel, Gaza, why this is something that just isn't of interest, at least not sufficient interest for you to stick with me. Because honestly, I actually do watch other hosts when they talk about Gaza, Israel. I always tuned in closely with Brianna Joy Gray when she was on The Hill Rising, and she talked about this issue all the time, as much as she possibly could. I always would look at it, Katie Halper, others, the heroes of the resistance against Israel. And so I'm curious if it's something I'm doing or if it's just you don't want to hear about it. A lot of dispute, right? People are arguing over who should get credit for this. And again, I think if anyone deserves blame, besides obviously the Israeli government, it's Harris Biden. But I read something I thought was very interesting. I don't have the clip here, but that what Trump did with his negotiator there, Witkoff, were really pressuring Bibi, saying, no, we're not going to give you everything you want. Yes, I want this deal now. That actually gave Netanyahu a little bit of cover where he could go to the Knesset, he could go to the media and say, yeah, Trump's pushing me to do this. Trump's doing it. It's not like he could go to the Israeli hardliners, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and say, I would love to let you keep killing Gazans. That nothing would please me more than an ever-growing death count in Gaza. But Trump is stopping me before I kill again, right? So there's a legitimate point here that this is actually what Bibi wanted. And for all of you who said, well, AIPAC is behind what Harris Biden are doing, and she can't say no. She can't say that she would do something different. She has to be loyal to her president when she took over as the candidate, and all of that nonsense. This may well be even what Netanyahu wanted. We know large segments, I don't know if it's a majority, but large segments of the Israeli population, not that they care about Gaza, not that they care about Palestine, they don't, but they do want an end to the killing. They do want the hostages home. So really what Trump apparently is doing, and you heard it from that reporter, the pressure that he put on Bibi may be exactly what Israel wanted as well. I can't give any credit. Now, I know Biden's taking a victory lap. Obviously, this would have happened months and months ago, probably over a year ago, if the Harris-Biden administration had just said to Netanyahu, no more arms. We're not giving you another bomb. We're not giving you another bullet. We're not giving you another missile because you're using them to kill innocent civilians. So that's done. That's over. And obviously the Intercept sees it the exact same way. Israel agrees to the ceasefire it rejected months ago. Thousands more died. And it's because Biden-Harris didn't put pressure on Israel, because Biden-Harris kept giving Israel what it wanted, kept giving them their fix of weapons, of money, of support. Despicable. I heard the guys on Due Dissidence talk about this, and one of the, I love the Palestinian flags, Ari. Thanks for sharing those in the chat. One of the points that Keaton made is that he is now at a point where he thinks Biden could be the worst president, certainly of his lifetime, and one of the worst of all time. That he's willing to say he's not there yet, Keaton said, but he could possibly be persuaded to the belief that Biden is worse than W. Now that's pretty strong stuff, right? Biden worse than the guy who gave us Abu Ghraib. Biden worse than the guy that lied us into the war on the people of Iraq that led to over 1 million dead just in that country. Biden worse than the guy who turned the Middle East into a power vacuum that put Al-Qaeda in charge of huge swaths of that region. And Weiss is saying, look, Biden gave us green-lighted genocide. And if that's not bad enough, and it certainly is, throw on the pile this incredibly destructive, incredibly expensive war in Ukraine that has turned that country largely into a failed state, that is turning Eastern Europe into a vacuum. So when you combine those two extraordinarily horrific policies, can you make the argument that Biden is even worse than W? And I think you can. I'm not saying I buy it, but I'm not saying it's wrong. Biden is so bad, Harris, Biden are so bad that we cannot state with any degree of confidence that Trump will be worse. None. And Trump's policies are really bad in so many areas, right? Especially when it comes to immigration, civil rights, freedom of speech. He wants to lock up, deport people if they criticize the government, if they criticize our pro-Israel policy. And yet, as bad as Donald Trump was, guy who refused to accept that he lost a race, tried to stay in power, used, the power he still had to try to illegally remain in office against the will of the people. That's how bad Donald Trump is. And he is that bad. And yet it's very plausible, it's very fair to say Joe Biden's even worse. I made the point to a progressive Democrat, isn't it now time that we just once and for all give up on the argument that the Democrats are the lesser evil? We can't make that argument. I never liked it much anyway. I don't think, for me, there are red lines. You're this bad, I won't vote for you. You're consistently bad on every issue, I won't vote for you. But if we get to a point where we can't even distinguish the Democratic Party as arguably less evil, then there's nothing to stop us from moving to a third or emerging party, right? Because the only legitimate claim in support of a Harris-Biden second term, the only argument that really made any sense is Trump would be worse. But if Trump isn't any worse, then there's no cost. The argument against voting for Jill Stein was there's a cost. There's a real cost involved, because if we vote for Stein and the impact of that vote, the impact of supporting Stein is that Trump beats Harris, Harris loses, then we're worse off than we would, we're even worse off than we would have been if Harris had won. But given that it's far from clear that that's true, right? It's far from clear that Trump will be worse than Harris would have been. In fact, the evidence now is maybe he won't be worse. Maybe he will broker peace. Not saying it will happen. We don't have it yet. But it looks like at least he's made more progress than Biden and Harris made in 15, 16 months. If you can't make a cogent, convincing, or at least persuasive argument that the Dems aren't as bad as the Republicans, then you have no argument against voting third party, against building an emerging party to take on the Republicans. None. And that's where we are right now. I don't think it's even arguable. 240-242-5646. Don't forget, let me see if I can get my, I like to get everything up, all my little ducks in a row. Don't forget, click like. There's your little like button. Maybe I should do blue and white. Too much blue and white. Is that true? I don't know. And then also, if you haven't yet done so, I implore you, please do subscribe. It just, obviously makes a huge difference for me. More subscriptions, more likes, and we do see the total number of videos that are distributed, that are beat the algorithm, and that get, critical mass of hits.